The concept of DNS is very simple. You have a host that has an IP and you want to give it a name. Then you want to access that host by that name. DNS is the perfect tool for that, and it works well. You assign the host name and the IP and you forget about it, and it works. However, if the environment is mutable, like a Devlab, where containers and hosts are created and recreated and repurposed and renamed frequently, managing DNS the usual way becomes a challenge. Sometimes multiple hosts are created for a few days, then removed or repurposed for something else with new names. And manually managing DNS in such situations is time-consuming and error-prone. Dynamic DNS updates can solve that for us. In episodes 2 and 3, we designed our network to automatically give predictable IP addresses based on the MAC address, and that worked very well for us. Now we want to extend that to get resolvable DNS names for our hosts automatically. In our Devlab, we have a role to configure Kia, the DHCP server, and a role to configure bind, the DNS server. We need these two to talk to each other. We need to update our configuration to allow Kia to update DNS records whenever a new host was assigned an IP. The DNS name would be the host name that Kia either gets from the host or assigns to the host. We have both situations. And the IP address would be the IP that Kia has configured the host with. Kia is a modular DHCP server, and one of its models is a dynamic DNS server, or DDNS, that can be configured to configure bind zones and DNS records using a standard protocol. We will update the bind role to allow dynamic updates so that our zones can accept updates. We can allow updates safely from localhost, but we will add an extra security measure. We will create a transaction signing key, and that will be used by bind to authenticate incoming update requests. Then we will reconfigure Kia to send these updates. And we will configure Kia DDNS server to update the Devlab zones in our bind server while using the transaction signing key that we created, so that we have secure communications between Kia and bind. The first thing we need to do is to get a transaction signing key. And for that, we need to have bind installed. That's why we need to run the bind role before the Kia role. The command that we need is part of bind, and this is how we do it. We issue this command, we specify a signing algorithm, and we give the key a name, and we get this result. Now, normally, in the manual process, you get this key, you include it in bind configuration, and you take it to Kia configuration. You copy these information to Kia manually. But if we are doing it using Ansible and installing both systems on the same time, Kia and bind, we need to automate that. So the way we automate that is we convert this to a command. So first I take this output and pass it to grep secret so that I get only this line. And then we pass it to awk so that we remove secret and we get only this word. And then we use SED, the stream editor, to get rid of the double quotations and the semicolon. So now we have this, this is the key that we are generating dynamically when we install bind, and we will configure Kia using it. The task to do that is this one. This is exactly the same command that I generated, and I'm saving this in a bind tsig key. Then I need to add one single command here for security. I want to allow update from localhost only. There are no changes here in bind, but we have changes in bind template, because now we need to add this key, the key that we generated right now. We need to add it to the configuration and we put it in the template. So it's tsig bind tsig key, std outline, the standard output lines, and it is the first line. And then we allow also updates from localhost using this key. and we change the update policy to allow updating this zone, all our zones basically, because this is a for loop that loops on all our zone. And since we have forward and reverse looking zones, we will need to allow updating A and PTR records. DHCID record, this is a resource record that Kia is sending automatically, and we need to allow it, otherwise we will get errors in the log because this was not updated. Bind did not allow updating it. And now that's all we need to do with bind. Now on the Kia cron, first we need to install Kia, and in the vars here in Debian, for example, we have Kia DHCP DDNS server, and we also define the service name that we need to restart. In Fedora, this is a meta package that installs all Kia packages, so we have that covered. By now, the Kia Dynamic DNS is installed. So after we configure Kia, we copy the DDNS options using a template similar to the template we used for bind, and then we inject the secret key in a specific place where we have left devlab tsig key. This is the new template for dynamic DNS, and we save it in a specific place here. So we will overwrite the existing template that comes by the default installation of Kia. The variables that we are using here are coming from the variable file, and the variable file is here. We update Kia to do DDNS updates. So these 3 commands under Kia configuration will enable Kia to do dynamic DNS updates on this zone also only. And this command here will allow us to override the default behavior, because the default behavior of Kia is to trust the hosts themselves to do dynamic updates. And since we do not want to copy that key to all our hosts, we copy it only to Kia here. So we instruct Kia to do the DNS updates and to override the client. I will talk about this later in the episode. These are the configurations for Kia Dynamic DNS. Notice that we define signing keys, and the secret would be devlab _ tsig _ key. That is the string that we will override with Ansible. We tell bind what are our forward DNSs zones, and notice the dot here. This is very important in bind's expansion, bind domain name expansion syntax. So you need to end every top level domain name with dot. And we tell it to use the key devlab that we designed here. Here also for the reverse zone, we specify the node, the zone that we want to update. In both cases, the IP address of the DNS server is localhost, because Kia and bind are running on the localhost. I added these loggers here so that I can check what Kia is doing, and I can confirm that the updates are working correctly. There are no changes in bind configuration, and as you remember, all these are not assigned by DHCP. These are static IPs. These are the swarm IP that we assigned like this to do load balancing using DNS, and we have the similar things in the reverse. Let's look at the playbook. In the playbook, the only change I made is that I had to install Kia after bind first, because we need to generate the key from bind, and that command is part of bind, not part of Kia. And I have a fresh installed router that I can show you in here. So this is running on the router. To test this, I want to restart the entire devlab. When all these hosts are rebooted, they will ask the DHCP server for new IPs. The DHCP server will update the DNS server. Kia will update bind with the new records that it assigns to all these IPs. So we will be able to test all of them right now live. GitLab will take a minute to reboot, so I will speed up the video. Our hosts are coming online, so let's look at the result we have. Now we are in the Devlab router, and I want to ask bind what updates did it have. EU name D. This is the traditional name of the bind daemon. And you see we are getting updates. So updating zone. These are updates for the reverse zone. And we are adding RR, the resource record, for the reverse zone. We are adding Python 3. You see we are adding the A records here. Previously we were adding the RR, the PTR records. Now we are adding the A records here. And with the update, bind says that he is deleting a record and recreating it again. So we know that this works. If we look also at dynamic DNS, at the dynamic DNS server, so if I ask here the DHCP DDNS server, I want to run the same command for the DDNS server. I see if I have any updates that failed. And apparently all my updates have succeeded. So the entire Devlab was assigned new DNS records now. We can verify that by going to a host on our network like Dashi here. I installed the NS lookup on Dashi on this host so that I can test. So now I can ask it NS lookup. Let's ask, for example, gitlab.devlab. And we get the DNS record immediately. Let's ask about devlab-ca.devlab. And we got also the record. Let's ask it about swarm.devlab. And we got the 5 IDs. We know that from the previous time. But let's ask it about the manager, for example, manager1.swarm.devlab. And we got the IP also for that. So I think DNS resolution is working. We have assigned IPs and names. We have DNS records for all our hosts in the system. Let's test VM 1000. VM 1000.devlab. Okay. So I think this is working. This has IP20. Weird. Okay, I want to verify that. Yes, it has IP20. This is how it is configured, and it takes a random IP from the pool. It's not a static IP. It takes an IP from the pool because we did not specify the address here. Like I forgot that I did it like that, but good that we tested this situation when we get an IP from the pool. Now I want to show you the thing that I told you I will come back later. This small change here. This is an option that we have for DNS. We can configure our hosts to do DNS search on a domain name so that if you have a host name only, DHCP can tell the host what is the domain name that you use if you are searching. So if I ask it to get me GitLab only, I get the result. I don't need to write gitlab.devlab. Using that change, that configuration, or that DHCP option, we tell all our hosts that when you search for a domain, you add .devlab to the domain. Of course, we can specify the domain name that they belong to in the DHCP, but that would go for all the hosts, and maybe we need to assign some hosts to different domains. So I did not include that in my Devlab configuration. And since we have DHCP like configured now, the only thing that remains, I think, is DHCP for IPv6, which we might do, we might not do in this season of the series. Since we have a DHCP, a fully working DHCP server, let's look at what options we can give our hosts. So those are the options that we can give our hosts, and all these can be included in that in the variable file to give our options. For example, if we want to tell the host what is your STMTP server, what is your NNTP server, what is your like there are multiple options that we can configure the hosts. One of them is for the domain name. I think in early here name servers, this is what we use. No, we use domain name servers, and domain name, yes. So we can specify, we can configure all the hosts with a fully qualified domain name that will be automatically attached to their host name. Anyway, like what you choose to configure your hosts will depend on your Devlab. And for my Devlab, I don't need anything other than the domain search, which is, I think, 119. When I did the testing, I restarted the entire Devlab BVE, but I did that only because I had a fresh router and all these hosts have already IPs from the router that we did not register in DNS. But from now on, if my server is running, I don't need to restart the server. Whenever I create a new host, whenever it gets an IP from the DHCP server, it will get a DNS record from the DNS server. I would like to ask the audience, what do you think about our work with the Devlab router? Do you like what we are doing with Ansible automatic configuration of a full-featured router? Please leave a comment below. If you have any other ideas about what we can do with that, please leave a comment as well. Next, we will do a development environment, and I still do not have anything prepared for that. So if you have any idea about what we can do, please also leave a comment and I will do my best to satisfy you. Later on, we will come back to the router if I see interest from the audience, and we will do DNS blocking with bind. This would be a standard compliant DNS blocking, similar to what you can do with Byhole and DNS mask and AdGuard and many of the other systems, but using enterprise grade software like bind. I plan to do 2 episodes about WireGuard and firewalling with Ansible. Those will come very soon, I think, and I will also do more development environments. I'd like to invite you to see my AI videos. I'm publishing AI videos, and I'm getting better feedback and more likes on them than I am getting from my Devlab videos, like especially when compared to a new channel like mine. So, do you like me to continue with the Devlab series, or would you like me to focus more on AI videos? I published yesterday about creating a social media persona using AI without training, without any type of training for the model. Using any standard model, you can create a social media persona from nothing. Like the model will generate the persona and you can put it in multiple environments and multiple poses and in multiple clothes and all that very easy using a single pass on the sampler. I previously published a video about AI for kids on how you can introduce little kids to AI and allow them to play a fun game with AI. I would like to thank all the people who follow me on YouTube, GitHub, and Medium, and the other platforms, and especially the people who leave me comments and likes. These interactions with the audience give me the feeling that my videos provide some value to others. And if you think that my videos or my code provide any value to you, please let me know in the best way possible for you. As usual, the code will be in my GitHub repository, and a link to that repo will be in the article and below the video. The article link also will be below the video. There will always be an open pull request in the repository on GitHub, and the code I wrote for this episode will not be merged until a pull request for the next episode is published. If you have watched this video, maybe you would enjoy looking at the code and tell me what you think. I welcome comments, reviews, code reviews, and any feedback on the code in GitHub. Please also feel free to fork the repository and modify it to match your own Devlab. You might be interested in episode 14 when we deployed Kia in the router, or in episode 16 when we deployed bind on the router. All of these were done in Ansible, and we used the same roles and playbook today in this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, and I hope to see you in a previous video or in a next video.